You wake up when the sun rises. You walk to the kitchen. You consume a bowl of processed grain. You leave your house to sit in a chair. For 99% of human history, this routine is completely unrecognizable. For about 300,000 years, your ancestors never looked at a timepiece to decide when to feel hungry. Today, the entire global structure of human life is built around 3 designated feeding times. This rigid schedule is an evolutionary anomaly. Have you ever wondered why your stomach growls at exactly the same times every single day? Your biology did not choose this schedule. Your society imposed it upon your biology. Your ancestors did not have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They had food. They had hunger. When the two sensations aligned, they ate. They did not wait for an arbitrary hour to strike upon a clock. They did not skip an available calorie simply because it was not the correct time of day. Your modern body is still operating on ancient biological software. Your digestive system is completely bewildered by the constant, predictable influx of calories. How did you get trapped in this endless cycle of scheduled consumption? Let us recreate a day in the life of your ancient ancestors. You are walking through the dense brush of a prehistoric savanna. The morning air is cool against your skin. You do not eat immediately upon waking up. You move. You scan the environment for resources. You find a small patch of wild tubers hiding beneath the soil. You dig them up with a stick. You eat a few of them raw. You keep walking toward the horizon. The modern concept of saving a large portion of food for a specific seated gathering does not exist yet. You are an opportunistic eater. You consume calories exactly as you find them in the wild. You might find a handful of tart berries in the late morning. You might scavenge a piece of bone marrow in the afternoon. You might eat nothing at all for 2 entire days. Are you starting to see the massive disconnect between your ancient past and your comfortable present? Anthropological evidence confirms this fluid approach to human sustenance. In 1963, the anthropologist Richard Lee traveled to the Kalahari Desert to live with the Jew Hoansi people. He meticulously recorded their daily habits to understand how traditional hunter-gatherers survived in a harsh, unforgiving environment. He found something that completely contradicted modern nutritional assumptions. They did not adhere to a strict meal schedule. They foraged continuously throughout the landscape. They ate casually throughout the day. They consumed mongongo nuts, wild roots, and occasional meat whenever the opportunity arose. They did not structure their entire society around 3 distinct times of mass consumption. Their eating was entirely fluid. It was dictated by the landscape and the seasons. It was dictated by true physiological need rather than a social timetable. Why do you feel the urgent need to eat a massive meal even when your body is resting perfectly still at an office desk? Your body is designed for scarcity. It is designed for intermittent fasting. It is designed to switch efficiently between burning glucose from fresh food and burning stored body fat when food is entirely absent. This metabolic flexibility kept your ancestors alive through brutal winters and long, exhausting migrations. Today, you almost never give your body the chance to make that crucial metabolic switch. You eat breakfast at 7 in the morning. You eat lunch at noon. You eat dinner at 7 in the evening. You consume small snacks in between these larger meals. Your blood sugar is constantly elevated. Your insulin levels never truly fall back to a baseline state. Your body is locked in a perpetual state of caloric storage. Have you noticed how incredibly tired you feel immediately after eating a large lunch? This biological confusion is a relatively recent phenomenon in the human timeline. The shift away from opportunistic eating began roughly 12,000 years ago. This was the dawn of the agricultural revolution. You settled down in one place. You planted predictable crops. You domesticated wild animals. You traded the unpredictable bounty of the forest for the predictable yield of the open field. But farming requires immense, sustained physical labor. You had to wake up before dawn to tend to the demanding crops. You needed a massive influx of calories to sustain you through a brutal day of physical exertion. You began eating a large meal in the morning to fuel your manual labor. You ate another large meal in the evening when the grueling work was finally done. The 2-meal day was officially born into human culture. But where did the third meal eventually come from? For thousands of years, 2 meals a day was the standard across most agricultural societies. The ancient Romans explicitly rejected the idea of eating more than once or twice a day. They viewed eating multiple times a day as a sign of absolute gluttony. They believed it was terrible for human digestion. You would have a light meal in the early morning. You would have your main meal in the late afternoon. There was no formal lunch. The concept of a midday meal simply did not exist for the average working person. So how did you end up eating 3 times a day in the modern world? The answer is not biological. The answer is purely industrial. You have to look at the massive societal shift that occurred during the 19th century. The Industrial Revolution completely destroyed the natural agricultural rhythm of human life. You moved away from the farm and into the crowded city. You moved from the open field into the dark factory. You were no longer bound by the rising and setting of the sun. You were bound by the loud blast of the factory whistle. The historian Abigail Carroll, in her extensive research on the history of American eating habits, documents this exact societal transition. Factory workers were subjected to grueling, uninterrupted hours of manual labor. They could not survive on just a morning and evening meal. They were burning too many calories on the factory floor. The factory owners realized that productivity plummeted in the middle of the afternoon. They had to institute a mandatory operational break. They had to allow workers to consume calories in the middle of the day just to keep the machines running efficiently. Is it unsettling to realize that your daily appetite was engineered by a 19th century factory manager? Lunch was not invented for your personal health. Lunch was invented for corporate productivity. It was a mechanical necessity. It was a scheduled refueling stop for human machinery. The 3-meal day was forged in the fires of the Industrial Revolution. It was solidified by the invention of artificial lighting, which pushed dinner later and later into the evening hours. It was permanently cemented into your culture by the post-war economic boom, which transformed breakfast, lunch, and dinner into massive, profitable consumer industries. You do not eat 3 meals a day because your physical body requires it. You eat 3 meals a day because modern capitalism requires it. Does it shock you to realize that your internal hunger clock is dictated by an outdated economic schedule? Modern scientific research is finally catching up to ancient biological reality. Your digestive system desperately needs time to rest. Your cellular machinery needs time to repair itself. When you are constantly digesting food, your body cannot perform essential internal maintenance. The researcher Dr. Sachidananda Panda at the Salk Institute has spent his career studying circadian rhythms and human metabolism. His research reveals a terrifying truth about your highly structured modern eating habits. When you spread your meals out over a 14 or 15-hour window, you completely disrupt your internal biological clocks. Your liver, your pancreas, and your gut all have their own distinct circadian rhythms. They expect a specific period of feeding and a long, uninterrupted period of fasting. When you eat late at night and early in the morning, you force these delicate organs to work overtime. You invite metabolic dysfunction into your bloodstream. You invite chronic inflammation into your tissues. You are slowly destroying your health simply by following the accepted rules of modern civilized society. Are you willing to question the schedule that has been handed down to you? Consider the research of Dr. Herman Pontzer at Duke University. He spent years studying the Hadza people of northern Tanzania, one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer populations on the planet. He measured their daily energy expenditure and their metabolic rates. He discovered that despite their incredibly active lifestyle, they burn roughly the same number of calories every day as a sedentary office worker. Their bodies are incredibly efficient at managing energy. But the Hadza do not eat 3 scheduled meals a day. They forage. They eat when they are hungry. They fast when food is scarce. Their bodies are perfectly adapted to this constant fluctuation in caloric availability. Your body is built with the exact same physiological machinery. Why are you forcing a prehistoric engine to run on an industrial timetable? The biological mismatch extends deeply into your cellular function. Every time you consume a meal, your body releases an orchestrated cascade of hormones to process the incoming nutrients. Insulin spikes to shuttle glucose into your cells. Ghrelin, the hunger hormone, drops. Leptin, the satiety hormone, slowly rises. This is a delicate and ancient chemical dance. Your ancestors only triggered this massive hormonal cascade a few times a week. You trigger it constantly. You trigger it at 8 in the morning with a bagel. You trigger it at noon with a sandwich. You trigger it at 3 in the afternoon with a snack. You trigger it at 7 in the evening with a heavy plate of pasta. Your hormonal receptors become numb to the constant noise. This is the physiological root of insulin resistance. Does it make sense to flood your system with fuel when your physical engine is barely running? To understand the depth of this error, you must look at your microbiome. Your gut is home to trillions of bacteria that control your digestion, your immune system, and your mood. Research by Professor Tim Spector has shown that your gut microbiome operates on its own strict circadian rhythm. Certain microbial species thrive during feeding hours. Other entirely different species emerge during fasting hours to clean the gut lining and repair damaged tissues. When you eat continuously from the moment you wake up until the moment you go to sleep, you never allow the cleaning crew to arrive. You disrupt the delicate ecosystem in your own stomach. The bacteria that repair your gut wall are starved of their necessary fasting time. You slowly degrade your own internal defenses because you were told that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Have you ever considered that the most important thing for your stomach might be absolute emptiness? The concept of breakfast itself is a marvel of modern marketing. Prior to the late 19th century, breakfast was simply whatever was left over from the night before. There was no specific category of breakfast food. It was entirely reinvented by men like John Harvey Kellogg. He created processed cold cereal as a supposed health food to cure societal ills. He heavily marketed the idea that a large carbohydrate-heavy meal upon waking was essential for vitality. This was not based on ancient human physiology. It was based on a desire to sell cheap processed grains to a growing population. You eat cereal because a 19th century marketing campaign convinced your great-grandparents it was necessary. You are trapped in a generational loop of habitual consumption. When was the last time you let true gnawing hunger dictate your actions? Your brain is also suffering from this constant state of digestion. Digestion requires an immense amount of blood flow and energy. When your body is focused on processing a large meal, it diverts resources away from your brain. This is why you feel that profound sluggishness in the middle of the afternoon. Your ancestors did not experience this post-lunch dip because they did not eat heavy scheduled lunches. When they were in a fasted state, their bodies produced ketones. Ketones are an incredibly efficient fuel source for the human brain. They increase mental clarity. They heighten focus. They sharpen your senses so you can successfully hunt and forage for your next meal. You have systematically denied your brain access to this high-performance fuel. You keep your brain running on the dirty exhaust of constant glucose metabolism. How much sharper would your mind be if you allowed your body to run empty? The modern solution is not a new diet. The solution is an ancient rhythm. The practice of time-restricted eating is simply a return to your biological baseline. It is the conscious decision to shrink your feeding window back down to a manageable size. It is the act of giving your internal organs the rest they were designed to require. You do not need to starve. You simply need to stop eating when your ancestors would have stopped eating. You need to respect the darkness. When the sun goes down, your digestive system prepares to shut down. When you force-feed it late at night, you are overriding millions of years of evolutionary programming. Can you imagine the profound relief your body would feel if you just let it rest? The 3-meal day is a massive cultural trap. It is a biological mismatch of epic proportions. You are an ancient hominid navigating a bizarre landscape of artificial abundance, blindly following a rigid schedule designed for factory workers. Your ancestors thrived on natural unpredictability. They thrived on periods of fasting. They thrived on the natural ebb and flow of genuine hunger. You have traded that ancient beautiful resilience for modern convenience. You have traded metabolic flexibility for a rigid arbitrary routine that serves no biological purpose. When the sun rises, you wake up and you immediately consume your first socially mandated bowl of grain.